Welcome to the Liberal Europe podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Silvestre, and thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We are on the eve of another excellent moment of debate and exchange of ideas, this time with the Black Sea Security Conference, organized by our friends from Friedrich Naumann Foundation, South Caucasus. As our regular listeners know, I was on the last edition in Tbilisi, where we had great conversations that are available on the show notes. This time, we have a conversation that will preview this year's edition in Sofia, and for that, it's a privilege to host Ambassador Batu Kutelia. The ambassador is a senior fellow at the Delphi Global Research Center and a former ambassador of Georgia to the United States. We talk about the topic of his participation in the conference, security and defense in the Black Sea, and after our main conversation, please stay to hear a little more about the path that the ambassador took before I got him on the podcast. But now, with no further ado, I bring you Ambassador Batu Kutelia. I'm here with Ambassador Batu Kutelia. Ambassador, thank you so much for coming to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Oh, it's a privilege to have you here. And you and I will be in Sofia for the 2025 Black Sea Security Conference. I was very fortunate to attend last year when I got, by the way, 3 high-quality conversations on our podcast. And this is a good opportunity not only to promote the conference, but then to get to know you a little bit and to go into some of the topics you are so versed on. And being at Tbilisi last year, I had the opportunity to fully comprehend the importance of the Black Sea region. So throw it to you. This region is important for the European Union, for Europe, for Asia, but also a major interest point for the world when thinking about the balance of a new world order. So from your experience, tell us how we should see this matter on a holistic approach.
Yeah, it's a very important question. And this question has been part of the many debates in different levels and across the Atlantic particularly. And this debate has not started last couple of years. Frankly, if we rewind a little or zoom out the recent history, the importance of the Black Sea as part of the European security architecture has started from the moment when Soviet Union was dissolved, and there was an attempt of creating a new world order based on values, and that's where we saw very inspiring process of the Europe whole and free being constructed. And this process included inclusion of the European and Euro-Atlantic structures, Eastern European countries, former communist bloc, and that inspired also Georgians, Ukrainians, Moldovans, that we would get a chance to, let's say, restore the historical justice. And after being a captive nation during Soviet occupation, we would make our path to where we are destined to be. That was Europe, institutionally and geopolitically. Unfortunately, this process stopped at our doorsteps, particularly at the doorsteps of the Ukraine and Georgia, and that has happened at the Bucharest NATO summit in 2008. And it happened just a year after when Russian President Putin in 2007 at the Munich Security Conference pronounced his aggressive revisionism plan. And then he started implementing it. Unfortunately, the free world was not ready. So the Europe whole and free and peace was not job finished. And apparently another job was not finished yet as well. That was the dismantling of Soviet Union. So what was remaining of Soviet Union, contemporary Russia, was resorting again the same aggressiveness and aggressive politics towards neighbors or so-called spheres of influence. And we saw that Georgia became a first victim of this Russian aggression when in 2008 Russia started war and invaded Georgia. At that time, many of us were warning the world that next will be the Ukraine, and after that it will not be stopped. Then the Baltic states, maybe then Poland. One of those individuals were American Senator John McCain, who has been warning the world, Lech Kaczynski, Polish president at that time, and many world leaders as well. So That's a kind of a trajectory that brought Black Sea, and especially because of the Ukraine and Georgia being the first two victims of aggressive invasion, is as an important component of discussion for European security. Then we saw Russian annexation of Crimea, which really changed a lot of things on the Black Sea itself, because it distorted the peaceful maritime traffic. Also, Russia's desire to obstruct pure commercial processes, even notwithstanding only the military affairs on the Black Sea. We saw them launching the military drills and closing for economic traffic, maritime communications, entire Black Sea, obstructing for example, such a vital, important things like grain export from Ukraine, targeting the strategic infrastructure, seaports, etc. So all this aggregated, and eventually we ended up in 2022 with the Russian full-scale invasion. In parallel, there was and still is a discussion how to secure the Black Sea for several reasons. One, again, because of this unfinished job of Europe, Holland, Free and Peace, and nations like Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia, because of this is their willingness to be part of the Europe. But also the important component to this was Black Sea as a bridgehead towards Caucasus, Caspian region, and Central Asia for a very important access road, so-called the Middle Corridor for Central Asian minerals, rare earth metals, which now got also very much accelerated because of the increased demand on those, and also Chinese and Russian predatory policies towards Central Asian countries. So we have a whole set of the interests here on the Black Sea of US strategic interests because of the ideas and the values and protecting democracy, also more transactional interests like having access to the Central Asia and Caspian, also energy transit, digital connectivity, because Black Sea hosts the main fiber optic that connects Europe, Caucasus, and further Central Asia to the global network, and new project is ongoing. So infrastructurally, economically, resource-wise, energy security-wise, and of course, value-wise, Black Sea has become a very important, so far unsolved puzzle of the future European architecture.
Very good. That was very comprehensive, and there was a couple of follow-ups that I would like to have. One, it's the natural one, and we're going to go up next, and that is about the security arrangement. You just mentioned that is a puzzle that it's still yet to be completed. But before that, you said something really interesting, which is there was not a complete dismantling of the former Soviet Union. There are still, and we all know that, the expansionist desires of Putin of trying to recreate the Soviet Union, as you said on the Munich Security Conference. You mentioned that. What is your assessment of the true capability of how it is right now, Putin's Russia, to be even more aggressive militarily to that region, not only the Black Sea region, but even Central and Eastern Europe? What is your analysis of that?
Like the Soviet Union, but maybe lesser degree, Russia's economy really relies on a couple of major sources of income. And one of those sources are hydrocarbon resources that they sell. So if you observe like a timeline and behavior of Russian aggressiveness, it really correlates to their ability to harvest high incomes on because of oil and natural gas prices. And once they have this type of a financial confidence, they launch aggressiveness. But also the nature of Russian aggressiveness, as President Reagan put it quite eloquently, and it was reflected in Reagan's National Security Decision Directive 75, the nature of Soviet and Russian aggressiveness lies in the nature of its system. So the system which is current Russia is constructed around requires this aggressiveness to feed the power. So when we speak about the nature of Russian aggressiveness, sometimes there is a little bit a misperception that if not Putin, then Russia might be different. But we saw Russia was the same early aggressive when Yeltsin was the president. Georgia was again the witnessing of it. So if we speak about Russia, I think it's not Putin's Russia we are speaking, but we are speaking Russia's Putin. So if not Putin, then there will be the other similar regime, or maybe even more ugly by nature. We don't know, but the key characteristics will be the aggressiveness, because first of all, the system requires, and the construct of the current Russian society, and then their ability, economic ability, to wage the wars. And we've seen it, Russia testing the red lines as well. Yeah, and the third component. Third component is whether the democratic world will be able to stop it somewhere. And when Russia invaded in Georgia, it was not only a Georgian Russian problem, some kind of a local isolated case of aggressiveness. It was a testing ground of further, as I said, bigger aggressions. So Russia tested the red lines. So, and every time they step over a red line and they are not stopped, then there will be another red line and they will be pushing forward further and further. So that requires, of course, and this is proportionally dependent on the political will of the free world and desire to stop Russia, but only not to stop, but push back, to revert all the wrongdoings they have done it. And I think it's in a benefit of the Russian people themselves. So unless they will not be defeated, and this type of system, which survived, so it dismantled, will not be fully defeated, like Nazism was defeated in Germany, they will not have a chance to have a normal state in the future.
Totally agree with you. And I'm going to pick up on something you mentioned, and that is be mindful what you ask for, because I remember here in Portugal when Evgeny Prigozhin was on his way to Moscow, there were some analysts saying, "Wow, this could be a good thing," and I was thinking to myself, "No, no, 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 I don't think it's a good thing." But now let's talk about the second point that you mentioned. What do you think could be then a security arrangement in this area that you think would be advantageous for all these stakeholders that are trying not only to maintain the cohesiveness of the region, but then to actually flourish?
Yes, that's exactly the question. So, security architecture, it will be wrong and mistaken to focus only to stabilize some kind of a status quo, because the status quo will invite further aggression once the new resources will be available. So it should be aiming to a more strategic perspective, particularly, again, economic stability, flourishing, and integrating those countries. That's why quite often we say that what will happen on the Black Sea will not stay on the Black Sea region. Kind of Las Vegas law applied to our region.
I'll take it.
Please. And we've seen it already now, because, as I said, with Georgia being initially a testing ground, now we see it in Ukraine. But we have a very interesting two components here in terms of when it comes to security and what it should mean. We are in every war always was a hybrid war with a different components and combination of information, propaganda, economy, and classical military components to it. But right now, we see a very interesting pattern. And if we compare Ukraine and Georgian cases, so in Georgian case, Russia tried first with the military invasion, the state capture. But once the state capture did not work, because still Georgian people were predominantly pro-Western, and they could not do as Lavrov told Condoleezza Rice at that time, a regime change, then they attempted a state capture. And state capture happened through the malign interference, through Russian oligarch corruption taking over state institutions. In Ukraine case, it was different. In Ukrainian case, Russia tried a state capture through Yanukovych, corrupting this system with all Russian connected oligarchs. But then, because Ukrainian people decided that that's not their fate, then Russia resorted on the state land capture and invaded militarily. But alteration of these two components will not stay only with Ukraine and Georgia. If successful, for example, in Ukraine, if Ukraine will be imposed some kind of unjust peace, like Georgia signed the unjust peace deal with Russia, this famous 6-point agreement, then we might see Russia deploying the same tactics of coercion plus malign interference in other democracies, particularly the neighboring Russia, as a means of the state capture, eroding the political institutions, making public distrusting the political process, seeding the apathy, then generating some crisis, and after this offering some kind of a status quo solution, which would create the new world order, which is in their understanding. So that's why the Black Sea in generally is kind of a laboratory of the future of the world, how authoritarians see. And Russia is not alone in this war. Why China is supporting Russia in this regard? Because maybe they have their own points of the friction, but in a strategic sense, they agree to have a different world order based on the spheres of influence. Therefore, I think, let's say, Black Sea experiment should end with the win of the free world and democratic world. And the winning means that Ukraine not only survives this war, but Ukraine will have an ability to continue and prosper as a democratic country. Well, Georgia, which is now under the Russian state capture, should finally get a normal democratically elected government to go back to its normal democratic statecraft trajectory, and that will be the win. And that will prevent further aggressions from the authoritarians, because it will demonstrate that the free world has not only the power which they have, but a political will as well to apply this power to have rules-based international order.
And I'm going to pick on that because I read your work, and we don't have that much time to go into the Georgia situation, but I had some really important podcasts about this, for example, with Ambassador Gigi Gaziali or with our friend Nino Calenzadze. But I can't resist asking you how important it is then to have these conversations on environments like last year was Tbilisi. Now it'll be in Sofia, but it could be in Bucharest, because this is regions that need this frank and open dialogue. What are the dangers? What are the things that are in your horizon that we have to look for, and then try to just raise consciousness? So tell us a little bit about the importance of this moment.
Yes, importance of all those aspects that we'll be discussing were slowly evolving. But I think after 2022 Russian invasion in Ukraine, entire this process reached some kind of climax. That's why we see now discussions on security guarantees to Ukraine. But I think it should be the much broader and holistic approach, and the security arrangements on the democratic frontline, as we call ourselves, because we see Moldova is also in the same target list of Russian Federation. So in that regard, of course, it's important to again apply the logic of a holistic approach, and all those issues, whether it will be pragmatic, transactional, economic, energy security, or democratic statecraft related, should be viewed as a connecting vessels. Whether it's the democracy, if it's targeted or undermined in Georgia, means democracy is undermined any place in the Europe, because it's a holistic sense. Because if authoritarians win in Georgia against democracy, that's a common defeat of democracy everywhere. The same is in Ukraine. The same is with Moldova. Even worse, we see now Russians are trying to interfere in domestic political affairs in more resilient democracies like Baltic countries, Poland, or even Germany through different means of the hybrid warfare. This is also something that we witnessed in our case, but I think that we will see it more and more expanding. What Russia or authoritarians are aiming for is, to immobilize the democratic processes, undermine the trust to the liberal democracy as a political system per se. And we could hear all these messages from Putin or his talking heads that liberal democracy is obsolete, because that's what irritates them. And also the organizational forms that was based on the values of liberal democracy irritates them. These are EU and NATO. That's why the next organization Russia will try to target or to undermine will be the NATO. They tried to undermine EU through the energy dependency and blackmailing economy, but now they are trying to challenge militarily NATO as well, because other institutional arrangements, unfortunately, but are not effective to provide necessary security for its member states. I'm speaking about OSCE or UN, where Russia has a veto power and abuses this veto power for long. So therefore, I personally think that we don't have any other security arrangement in generally than NATO, organization-wise, which can provide a long-term, stable, secure guarantees on the Black Sea. So I would like to see more NATO presence on the Black Sea, where Turkey, as a NATO member country, can play significant role. I think Romania and Bulgaria should be allowed and supported to increase their military presence on the Black Sea for securing economic and military components of functioning Black Sea region as a part of the European architecture, and also have an ability to project Black Sea as an attractive geopolitical identity for other nations, for example, Azerbaijan and Armenia.
This is amazing conversation, Ambassador, and I will have you back after the conference so that we can continue and also make a little bit of highlights from the conference that you and I are going to attend. But before that, as we say our goodbyes for now, tell us how people can find you online.
In Georgia, we all use the Facebook for domestic purposes and domestic political debate and others. But also I use Facebook to post important international things that I think important, and I post there. LinkedIn is my professional profile. You can find me on the LinkedIn. And I'm posting also in parallel on X and Instagram, which is linked to my Facebook account. Also, whatever I publish in different outlets, for example, recently I published an article with my colleague in Minnesota newspaper on US foreign policy, but I am posting this also on my social media accounts. And please visit Delphi Global Research Center website, which will become more interactive and operable recently because it's a new project, but you will find a lot of interesting things on our website too.
I'm going to put all the links on the podcast show notes. I'm also going to put the links for last year edition of the Black Sea Security Conference this year, 14 November to the 16 November in Sofia, Bulgaria. I've been talking with Ambassador Batu Kutelia. He's the senior fellow at the Delphi Global Research Center. He's going to be on the panel on security defense exactly at this magnificent conference. Ambassador, this was a delight. These are important conversations to have. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast.
Ricardo, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be with you and look forward for our further conversation.
So, Ambassador, tell us a little bit about yourself. So, what was the path that you took before I got you on the podcast?
I'm a physicist by education, so I have PhD in physics. And
wow, you just blew my mind.
Yeah, so if you observe me carried away with, for example, SMR, small modular nuclear reactors, as a solution for geopolitical toxic hydrocarbon dependencies, please stop me, because that's what I'm passionate for.
Ambassador, actually, I'm going to have you on the podcast again just to go over that. So you're a nuclear physicist then?
I'm not nuclear and material scientist, but one of my thesis was about the gallium arsenide technology, and gallium is a critical mineral. So I was dealing with critical minerals before they were sexy. So yeah.
Wow.
But
Talking
nuclear
about being ahead of the curve then.
well, science is always ahead of the curve, and sometimes it becomes demanded, sometimes neglected, but eventually everything comes back to the science. So,
So getting back to you, so this is your background, and then you get interested in politics, in diplomacy. How did that come about?
yeah, that happened actually by mere accident. So, in the late 90s, United States Embassy launched a pilot project in Georgia, which was called the Georgian American Institute of Public Administration. So, and nobody heard about public administration as a term at that time in the post-Soviet Georgia. It was English, and then they were doing the tests. So I just went there to test my English abilities, and then I enrolled, and then foreign minister at that time, very visionary guy who was on the board of this institution, recruited me and some of my friends for the new project in the foreign ministry. That was negotiations on Georgia's NATO approximation, Partnership for Peace project, and CFE treaty, that was arms control, one of the major arms control treaties on the conventional forces in Europe, that because of the breakup of Soviet Union and Warsaw Pact was renegotiated. So that's in general it was a Polish political military issue. So that was quite interesting momentum in the history of Georgia. So I joined it, and another motivation was part of this negotiation where Russian military base withdrawal, legacy military bases that we inherited on Georgian soil. So to negotiate this process with Russia, where I was involved from A to Z, and it was quite a remarkable experience. So that's how I got in the foreign ministry, and spent most of my career in the foreign ministry until the Rose Revolution happened in 2003, where then I did some other jobs in defense ministry, National Security Council, and ended up as an ambassador here in Washington in 2009. That happened after 2008 war with Russia. And during the war, I was first deputy defense minister as well.
So you still hit the physics book now and then, just some bedtime reading?
Yeah, actually, I was keeping the finger on the pulse for my personal interest, but also my father is a physicist, so he kept me up to date. And now when I quit government job, and now I'm doing more consultancy work besides some of the academic work I do. Physics and my political science and international affairs experiences somehow cross the paths. That's where the nuclear energy and SMRs coming from, because now there is a big boost in the efforts because of the artificial intelligence and demand on the green, safe, and stable baseload energy, which is nuclear. There is no other better technology so far. And now we see all the major US companies, European companies, especially the tech companies, investing heavily on various technologies of the small modular nuclear reactors.
But now you're a senior fellow at the Delphi Global Research Center. So what's up on your horizon for you?
The idea of forming this new think tank in Washington, of course, there is no lack of the think tanks in Washington, D.C. in general or in the U.S., but we decided to focus mostly on European and Eurasian affairs, simply because we think that what is happening in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine particularly, and also Russia's aggressive revisionism that started from Georgia, I think deserves more interest in terms of in a strategic perspective, not only what is happening now, but how it will affect or what next world order should look like. And for that purposes also we commit ourselves also to educate the new generation. So that are the two key priorities. And the third and the most important, I mentioned artificial intelligence and new technologies. So We think that the New World Order will be a multi-layer and cross-disciplinary construction where we would see a lot of science and technology affecting the construction of the New World Order. So we need a generation who are more technically savvy, also be educated on geopolitics and in generally political affairs.
This is all for now. I'll be back soon with more podcasts. You can always visit the website liberalforum.eu to know more about the activities of the European Liberal Forum. So until the next episode, let's keep making the world a better place.
You were listening to the Liberal Europe podcast by the European Liberal Forum. This podcast was co-financed by the European Parliament.